maybe later, English is what they translate it into, yeah? Other than how we all write English and we never even like embrace our native what? Languages. So I don't know what most of you guys think. Do you think that's something that can be achievable, especially for a country like Uganda, which has, I don't know how many languages. How many languages do we have in Uganda? 56, yeah. We have 56 languages. So do we think this is something that can be achievable? Do you think as Africans we can start writing our books and they are in our native languages? Yeah, so let me hear what you think. Jerome, we have someone over there who has a submission, and then right after her we shall go to that gentleman. Your name, where you come from? Oh, okay.
Hello.
We shall get to you.
Greeting children of the greater dark ones. The one who comes in peace is always welcome. The one who comes to teach is always welcome. And the one who comes to learn is especially always welcome. Positive energy and creation energy to you all. My name, I'm called David Nankunda. And on the reading culture of the African people, me what I see, the thing we are talking about, transforming books in the cultures, it will widen the readers, because there are people in the villages who don't know how to read English. But if you can transform that book into various local languages, people will also access those books and get information. And what we lack most in Africa is information. People just talk even they don't know what is going on because they don't want to read. Another thing that digitalization can help us is all readers should start putting out audiobooks, because we still don't have that culture of reading. But if people can start listening to those audiobooks, and the culture of reading will come slowly after getting information. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David Ankunda. Yeah, so we have so many people. We have the digital divide. Not everyone has a smartphone. Not everyone understands English. So if we actually had these write-ups in different languages, we could even have people from the villages read. Like Garang Lester has told us, reading is a necessity. Just like how you need books, your mind needs to be fed. Yeah, so over to you.
Thank you, Sabrina. Hello, people. My name is Denise Kechimuri. I'm a writer, and I work for a marketing house called Rewritten, Uganda. So there's something that you touched on, and it's something that we're passionate about at Rewritten, is getting our, I don't even call it vernacular, our languages, because English is vernacular. We were colonized. So it's the foreign language. It's not that English is our mother tongue. It's not. Yeah. So I read a book recently by a South American. He's actually Dominican. And the entire book, he's putting Spanish words inside. He's not italicizing them. He's not, what do you call it? You know, there's that where you put in brackets, explanation. No, it's up to you. You're reading his book, you Google, and you find out what it means, right? And I think I also experienced this when I read Chimamanda's books. She just puts the Nigerian, I think it's Pidgin that they speak. And I was like, why do we do it as Ugandans? Because most Ugandan writers will put nyabo and put in brackets woman or something like that. So I think we have to have a conversation about our language as well, because it's very crucial. If you're writing a book, who's your audience? And if you're writing, like you said, if you're Muchiga, can you write a whole book in Ruchiga? That's also another thing. Yeah. Did we grow up speaking our language? Yeah. Or did we grow up speaking English? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we have, thank you.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
My name is Wawule Salome Patience. I'm from Cornerstone Leadership Academy. And I do egg also. And I also like poetry. In fact, I'm greatly inspired by poetry. Ooh. So about the writing in local language. I think expression for some people is easier in what? In local language, because this is something you speak every day. You can easily, that is something that, because language relates us to most of our close ones. It's language that brings us together. So it's easier for you to express yourself in your local language. And besides, we shall get to also hear of new stories, because there are stories that are maybe in a different part of Uganda, that someone can't, that when someone is writing in English, she wants to write what people want to see. Like maybe the world, you can find that someone wants to write maybe a detective because she wants to impress maybe the audience she's writing to. But there are stories that that person, maybe if she's from Bale, that people in Bale want to hear. And it's best done in the local language that is spoken there. So I think writing in your local language gives better expression of writing.
Wow, that's very smart. Let's give her Thandra's hand clap. She brings up a concept of untold stories, yeah? And that's really, really brilliant. If I was rich right now, I would have bought for you a sweet. Yeah, so she says in her opinion, it's important for us to actually have local languages in our literature, because what they do at most is enable us to tell stories that we never get a chance to hear. And to me, I think that's very powerful, because there's so many stories in different parts of the world, but we never get to hear them. We never get to know what's happening there. So that was really brilliant. Jerome, we have someone over there.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Eunice Gloria Adong. I'm a student of psychology, Makerere University. It's a very good idea about writing in our local languages, but if we are going to do that, we need to start now, we need to start early, we need to engage the parents. Why? Because I'm a final year student, and recently I was doing a research in Luganda, in our local languages, especially Luganda, and we had to speak to people who could not speak English, and then we had to transcribe. I combed my entire class, final year class, like looking for students who could read Luganda, and I failed to get. People cannot read, they can speak their language, but they cannot read their local languages, they cannot write, especially the university lot. I speak for Makerere University. I don't know whether it's true for other universities, but it's really a big challenge for students of our age to write or speak their mother languages. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are getting close to the panel discussion, but we have that gentleman over there. Yeah, so after him, we shall be getting ready for the panel. If you're a panelist, get ready. In just like 2 or 3 minutes, you'll be coming to the floor. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. To your question, I honestly think it's achievable for us to write in our mother tongues. However, I think we need to trace where the wound is. What is it that enabled writers like Ngugi wa Thiong'o, name it, it's a long list, for them to write first in their mother tongues and then have translations later in English and all these other languages? What were the political structures then? What was education then? What was the socio-economic structures then? I find it quite, it saddens me actually that we forget sometimes how powerful education is. And because it has the means to create this ability to write in our mother tongues, I honestly find our age bracket trapped in between what is Western, because we are half-baked. I believe I am half-baked. And then the African culture where I come from, the mother tongue it is sad that I can barely sustain a speech in my mother tongue, you know? And it's because the wound stretches way back. Some of us come from families whereby we were ordered to speak in English. We were beaten for speaking in Luganda or in our mother tongues. And even the schools that we went to, we used to wear bonds. There used to be someone that writes people who speak in vernacular. They call it vernacular, you know. So the wound traces way back. And for me, I believe the education sector has the power to address this. It has the ability to address this, empower our mother tongues, and most especially the little children, those that are in the kindergarten. Empower them that there is nothing as beautiful as their language. Empower them that there is nothing as intimate. There is nothing as so powerful as being able to express yourself, be able to write in your mother tongue. That way, when we begin from the grassroots, trust me, the generations to come will be able to write in our mother tongues. Because I don't think it is easy for us. I cannot perform a poem in Luganda. You know, it is not easy for this generation right now to fully engross itself and say that I'm going to write in this mother tongue that I'm going. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we are seeing Madame Imelda. She's part of the panelists, but let us hear from her. And yeah.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I will not be speaking for Ministry of Education, but I will talk as a government official. I'm Imelda Ngabi. I work with the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development, specifically in the Department of Literacy and Community Development. I want to say that as a country, we have a policy. It is called the Mother Tongue Policy. That Mother Tongue Policy is housed in the Ministry of Education. What is its goal? It's promoting local language use as in instruction. And as a policy issue, actually, the children in P1 to P3 are supposed to be instructed in vernacular, those who are not in the urban areas and the cities. And English is only taught as a subject. Unless there is a challenge with implementation, but that is the government status. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much for letting us know that the government actually has that in plan. But of course, maybe implementation would be something that needs to be strengthened. Yeah. We've been having really nice conversations, and this is just the beginning. So now we are preparing ourselves. Actually, now is the time for our first panel discussion, the Reading Innovations Roundtable. So I'm going to be reading the people on that panel, and please give them a round of applause as they come to the stage. Jerome, I don't know if you want to come and help me organize the chairs or if they are organized enough. Yeah, maybe you could do that for me. You can make them kind of like in a semicircle. Yeah, thank you very much, Jerome. Yes, so on our panel discussion, we have Achen Mary, the President Rotary Club, Bugolobi. We have Madame Imelda Charingavira, Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development. We have Moses Odeke, the Country Director, PLO Foundation, Uganda chapter. And then we have Emily Akulu, Executive Assistant Pan-African Women's Organization, PAO. And then, lastly, we have Alionzi Lawrence, Makere Guild Presidential Aspirant. And then our moderator for this panel discussion will be Regan Muyinda. Yes, Regan Muyinda as a moderator for the discussion. So, without wasting time, if you're on the panel and you're here, please take up the stage. Achen Mary, is she around? Okay, Madame Imelda Charingavira. Yeah, let's take up the seats. Let's give her a round of applause. A round of applause. She's from the Ministry of Gender, Labor, and Social Development, particularly literacy. So you can take a seat anywhere over there, ma'am. You're welcome. We also have Emily Akulu, Executive Assistant Pan-African Women's Organization. I don't know if she's in the house. If you're in the house, please come forward. Okay, and we have, oh, she's around? Is she around? Priska? Is she around? Okay, if you're on the panel and you're in the house, kindly just come forward. And then we can have Regan, our moderator. Please, let's give him a round of applause. Regan Muyinda, you're highly welcome. Yeah. Alionzi Lawrence, the Makere Guild aspirant, is he around? Okay. Okay, so Garang Lester, we are hijacking you to be part of this panel. Thank you very much. Let's clap for Garang Lester. And then the gentleman over there who talked about Ngugi wa Thiong, if you don't mind, please come to the panel. Yes, you. Let's challenge you to think to the feet. And then a lady. Do we have a lady willing to join the panel? Would you want to join the panel? Yes, sure, come forward. Yeah. Let's give her a round of applause. Do we have any other seats? Oh, okay. I think that can do. Okay, so what we are going to do for recording and, coordination, can we all take up these middle seats? Even for the pictures to look lovely, we are scattered. So people over there, I'm going to request you to come and take up these middle seats. Yes, quickly, guys. We don't have much time. The Guild President aspirant is also here. Agatha is just going to help us get a seat for him, and then we will be set for our panel discussion. Let's welcome him. Let's give him a round of applause. He's called Alliance Lawrence. You're welcome. Yeah, and thank you very much. Gracious, maybe you would also like to be part of these people. Just come a little bit closer. Everyone who is far, we are going to use this middle part of the stage. Yeah, and we have in our presence, we have Moses Odek, the country director, PLO Foundation, Uganda chapter. He is here. So we are just going to improvise quickly, get a seat, and make sure that our panel discussion begins just in a second. Hold for me. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so let's just welcome the country director on the panel, and then we begin. Let's give him a round of applause. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, our MC. My name is Mwinda Regan. I'm a writer, a script writer at NTV Uganda for the show NTV on the Spot that happens every Thursday. I also work with Nietu Africa Foundation. And I'll be your moderator for today. So we are going to have a panel discussion, and the ground rules are I ask the questions to the panelists. They answer in as few as 3 minutes each per question. And then later on, we shall move to the audience. After the panel discussion, we shall move to the audience, and the audience will be able to ask questions to our panelists. However, I'm kindly requesting that for recording purposes, if we could just occupy the first 2 lines. Yeah, for recording purposes, if we could occupy these first 2. Thank you. Studies have shown and continue to show that reading extensively or even intensively helps in quite very many ways, among which include exposing our minds to different ideas. Reading beyond our scopes, of course, also helps us in our communication skills. So the reading benefits are quite as many as possible. But still, our African society today has failed to ingrain the aspects of reading in our day-to-day lives. So how important is it to read beyond our academic scopes? How important is it to read beyond our academic askings? So, to discuss this on the panel, we are joined by Mr. Lawrence Alionzi, the Guild Presidential Aspirant of Makerere University, Madam Imelda Chalingaba, the Principal Literacy Officer, Minister of Gender. We shall also be joined by Garang Lester, who serves as the ESC, Youth Ambassador for South Sudan. And then also Mr. Okay, some of our panelists haven't managed to make it, so they have been replaced. Therefore, when our panelists are taking on their questions, they will be able to introduce themselves more because there are some names that I don't have, okay? Yeah, so I will start with, I think we can start here. Yeah, Mr. Lawrence Alionzi, you are a student leader and therefore also a leader among the youth today. Give us the contextual view of how reading is perceived today
Well, thank you so much, dear moderator. Like you already did say, my name is Alionji Lawrence. I'm an electrical engineering student, but I'm also a student leader, not just a Guild presidential aspirant. Fellow panelists and academics or members of the academia present in the building, members of the press, a very good morning. Thank you so much for having me this morning. It is true, and I think the subject that preoccupies us this morning, for me personally, is one that is just as topical as it is relevant. Whereas many students or many educated people can read, they do not read. The cleanest example or the most classical of them all is the fact that we have zeroed down our reading to only academics. A typical university student wakes up in the morning, attends lectures, goes back to their rooms to watch movies or do things outside of reading, the most basic of them being on social media. So we do not go beyond the classroom, and even the classroom itself, we only invest in passing examinations. So in my view, what gives relevance or objectivity to such healthy discussions like one on this panel is the fact that the reading culture is on a very serious decline because we do not appreciate it as a culture that it should be. And therefore, for me, I think it's a healthy discussion, or one that I have come to appreciate if we can talk about the reading culture, because I think it's on a very serious decline. I hope that responds to your question.
Yeah, thank you very much. You can pass over the microphone to this gentleman. Sir, you will introduce yourself and then also give us the contextual view of the reading and how it is perceived today in our societies.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moderator. I am called Moses Shakes Odekelo Odeke. I am the country director, PLO Lumumba Foundation, Uganda chapter. I also work at the Ministry of Internal Affairs, but in this capacity, I will be speaking as the country director, PLO Lumumba Foundation, Uganda chapter. Thank you so much, the audience and fellow panelists. I join you this morning in discussing something that is as relevant today as it has always been. You know, I'll take you down history. Africans have lagged so much behind. We didn't benefit in the same. We also missed out on the third industrial revolution. But we can make amends and we catch up in the fourth industrial revolution, which to me is the information age. Africans never wrote since the white man set foot in Africa. Prior to that, there was so much literature in Egypt and the University of Alexandria. Africans paid so much premium to handling what constituted literature and reading culture. Happened. In between there, when the white man set foot in Africa, something went amok, and we are trying to rise from the ashes. Right now, what is your typical African youth? Is a person who dances and blinks like a ghost on TikTok, so much preoccupied with the Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter. Not that these social media are totally, but how do we use social media? So there's also a debate that television is the most vicious tool invented that has brainwashed the African child. You know, our ladies are preoccupied with the cheap Spanish operas and soaps, cheap Indian soaps, so they do not even concentrate on bringing the reading culture to the children. You as a man, you set out to go and work, you leave your lady at home, she does not read anything to the child. And yet, when some of us were growing up, would have our mothers put you down, read for you. So that would inculcate a spirit and culture of reading in a child by then. But then here we have a child of 2 years, they have given you a tablet, they have given you, you're sitting in front of TV. So that is the tragedy we find ourselves, and that is my pain. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. You can pass on the microphone. From the contextual view, we all seem to agree that our reading culture has in very many ways been obliterated. And he raises a very big point about the parental role. To what extent has the parent, to what extent can the parents foster the reading culture in young people?
Thank you so much, moderator. My fellow panelists and the House at large, good morning. Once again, I'm Imelda Chalingabira. I want to say this is a very passionate subject for all of us who are here, and Uganda at large, and the whole continent, if I may say. One of the major issues that is coming up is that sorry about that. The challenge that we have as both a country and a continent is our poor reading culture. And I want to take it up from the point of view of the parents, but also looking at the literacy situation in our country. I've already told you that I work with the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, specifically in the Department of Literacy and Community Development. And our major mandate is to ensure that we help the youth and adults who were unfortunate. They were not like us. They did not get the opportunity of studying or to access formal information, formal learning, to also start benefiting from the development process. The major challenge is that when we talk about literacy generally, because reading goes with writing, many people think that people who do not read and write are foolish. We might even be thinking the same way here. Yeah? Not knowing that actually, when you go back to our traditional Africa, before even the written word was introduced, we have a very big, rich indigenous culture. We have a lot of knowledge, a knowledge that is not written. And actually, we are unfortunate that much of what was known by our forefathers is not being inherited by their offsprings. I listened to some of the discussions that happened before we came here. People are really suffering that they don't know their local language. So for me as a parent, but also as a professional, I think the issue of reading is beyond an individual. It should be intentional. First of all, by policy that all Ugandans have equal access to learning. Yeah? And when we are talking about learning, we are talking about lifelong learning. Not learning in the class only, but learning in wherever you are, whether you are at home, whether you are at work, learning should be lifelong. And in terms of reading,
if I'm to interject, you talk about the traditional way of learning, yeah? And of course, we are alive to the fact that times have changed, in the sense that we are now dealing with absent parents who are all ingrained in work, they're absorbed with work, and these children are actually left, if they are not left with their housemaids, they are at boarding school. How then would we ingrain those reading aspects that used to be nurtured at parental level to the current context?
Yeah, I wanted to bring it from the bigger picture so that we can focus. In terms of the current situation, I want us to refer back to the COVID period, when we had all our children back in our houses because the learning institutions were completely locked down. And we had this open and distance learning where they were getting materials. But unfortunately, maybe some of the parents, many, the majority, they did not have the literacy skills. So you cannot help somebody if you do not have the skills. So what am I talking about? As a country, we need to refocus, and we have a lifelong learning framework which addresses both the needs of the children, the needs of the youth, and the needs of the adults, both in terms of learning. So that if I'm a parent, I should be also having access to reading materials, because access is another big challenge, leave alone not having the skills. Many of our people have phones. Some have what they call the Mapesa, the fast phones. And others are having these modern phones. But what are we doing with it? The challenge is that we do not have a framework that is actually focusing on holistic learning, which would embed reading within that bigger framework, and so that we promote actually family literacy and learning.
If I'm to still ask on that, wouldn't that therefore be a policy question?
Obviously, that is a policy question, okay. And that's where we are. And as government, actually, that is what the member states of UNESCO are looking at. We are supposed to formulate lifelong learning policies that are going to cater for the learning needs of all ages so that we can transform our society. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Of course, you will introduce yourself. From what we have heard so far, we all seem to agree that there is an aspect of a phone. Somewhere, somehow, there is an aspect of a phone. So, in a phone-obsessed society, how do we move forward and rebirth the reading culture?
Thank you so much, Mr. Moderator, my fellow panelists, and everyone present. Good morning to you. My name is Chitaka Alex. I am a creative facilitator, playwright, poet, and an actor. I studied here from Makerere, did a diploma in performing arts and film, and I'm a theater practitioner. So allow me to, speak from the perspective of a performing artist. I totally agree with you, Mr. Moderator, because times have really changed, and those who have accessibility to phones are, it is crystal clear, and we are obsessed, truly, because there is accessibility to information. We can also get, should I say, brand ourselves or advertise ourselves or, get ourselves out there. So that obsession is crystal clear. It's understandable. And now, before I answer you, I would like to speak on the point of the role of parents. It is quite, when you look at the introduction to reading as a culture, there are so many families. We come from societies or the different families where the only time that a child is introduced to a book is when he or she is going to school. So there and then, the child gets a mindset of, oh, the only moment I'm supposed to read is when I'm going to do an exam, or when I'm going to school, or when I'm going to, be before teachers or whatever, name it. So what are we saying? We need to restructure this system. Have books introduced to children at a more, there's, just to do a small reflection, there's a poet who said, I've forgotten his name, he says, life is a play, So if books are introduced as form of a play, and children are able to get that touch of, oh, I can interact with a book for pleasure purposes. I can open a book and read and interact with, name the several characters in there for just purposes of having fun. Trust me, reading culture is lifelong experience. It is not something that you're going to, stop along the way. So once the touch is from a pleasure point of view, then it gets to the educational point of view where it is to learn and, pass exams and all that. The culture slowly and slowly picks up. Now, with the obsession with
if I'm
phones...
to interject, at what level do we do that?
At an age that a child is able to fall in love with those drawings in our books, with those little cartoons, because that is where I fall in love with a pen and a pencil. And in the works that I do, I work with children so much. I've seen children so passionate about books. I've seen children so passionate about interacting with books. So that moment you see your child, falling in love with cartoons, falling in love with just flipping pages, trust me, that is the point of connection. As honestly speaking, we cannot, change is a fact of life, and there's nothing we can do about phones. There are debates all over regarding allowing students to, work in with phones, or even, in high school and all that. That shows how powerful phones can be used as a learning tool. It shows how powerful phones are mediums of communication, and also even a teaching aid. There is something called e-learning. I think it has to do with technology, gadgets, and all that. So we cannot do away with phones. However, I don't know if this can be done through the policy makers. I don't know if this can be achieved through, the education system being structured in terms of accessibility to particular information within schools, so that, because in as much as these gadgets are helpful, they are also destructive elements. Along the way, you find yourself, surfing or looking at different things as opposed to what you are supposed to. But again, like I've said, I love roots. And by roots, I mean children. Because once these children are nurtured into the culture, into the simple steps of reading, trust me, when the child is handling a phone, and all the people here are writers, I'm pretty sure some of us have got those reading apps like Kindle, Amazon, name it. It's because of that passion. And everything begins from the root. Time is going to come when, I don't know if it has actually come. Students are working in with phones, in high school, be it whichever level of education. So once they have that love for reading, I'm pretty sure they themselves will want to download all these apps. And at the end of that, they find themselves reading a book or two on their gadgets, I think.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Garang Lester, it seems that the question is not just about phones. The question is with technology. I mean, he highlighted how televisions are also changing things, social media applications. How do we deal with this modern technology that is here and here to stay, but also close the gap and ingrain aspects of the reading?
Thank you, Regan. Once again, my name is Garang Kwot. Lester is my name. I am from South Sudan. I studied the law at Nkumba University in Entebbe. I am a member of the East African Community Youth Ambassadors Platform. I represent the Republic of South Sudan. The East African Community Youth Ambassadors Platform is an initiative of the East African Secretariat to popularize the integration agenda in the East African community using the biggest population of people, that is the youth. I read, I do it a lot. I also write a few things. I host a blog on WordPress. I write about the law, masculinity, femininity, and technology. So I think from my perspective, I'm going to do so much of context, because I think a little context is very important in discussion about reading and writing, especially in Africa. And in relation to that, I want us to walk back a bit and see where we have come from. Because reading reading comes from writing. We cannot read what has not been written. Now, what do people write? And then how does that fit in the African context? I think that is very important. What people write is stories about their lives, about their way of life, how they have seen life, their experiences, and their creative ideas. That is what people put in writing, and that is what people then read. So now, in Africa, originally, we never had writing as a way of reserving our ideas or a way of sharing these things. We did them through songs, through stories, and through folks events, like dances and stuff like that. That is how we reserved them. And that if someone wanted to express how they felt about something, they would they would sing a song, and that song will last for generations, and it will be passed on. If someone wanted to express anything, they would do it in a story, and such stories would be shared for generations to come. And that is where the folk songs and stuff like that came from. So that is how we reserved those things, and that is how we expressed them. Now, writing them down as a way of reserving them for other people to read is a new thing, and that has to be appreciated in discussions about reading and writing, because it will inform how then we introduce the new concept called reading and writing as a new way of expressing feelings and reading about other people's feelings, and as a result, reserving what we went through as an African. So before the likes of Chinua Achebe, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, and other prominent African writers, we did not have so much of that. But that doesn't mean we did not have creative Africans. But how did they reserve their creative works? They reserved them in the songs they created. So now there is a huge line between the new way of reserving these things and expressing them, and then the African way of doing it. But then as modern Africans, we're struggling to merge how our forefathers and foremothers did that and how the world we are in now does it. And that is something that needs to be appreciated if we are going to encourage people to read and write. So how do we then draw that link between those two? The first thing we need to understand, and like I said, is to appreciate that this is a new way of doing what we have done for generations, right? Now, as a new way, there is a way of introducing a new thing to a new people for them to appreciate it. So we are not just going to impose reading and writing on people because it is not as easy as it appears. For us, people who read and write, it might appear easy because we have the incentives and the reasons why we do it, and we know the importance of the same. But you cannot just simply walk to someone else and make them feel they will appreciate it the way you do. So we need some form of incentives to make that happen. And I appreciate when you talked about early introduction to reading. So why is reading still elusive to us? 4 things. 1, we still view reading and writing as an elitist hobby, a thing of those who have gone to school, and perhaps those who still go to school, a thing that a random person that maybe sits in their shop every day and selling their merchandise may not want to identify with. But in each sense, these are the people that have time. Maybe as you sit in your shop, you have a book that you're reading, and then you're serving your customers. But how do we introduce them to such things? So we need to first de-intellectualize the concept of reading and writing so that these people can identify with it the way we, intellectuals and elites, identify with it. That's one. Number 2, reading, and I think the president-to-be and the gentleman at the extreme beginning have already spoken about it. People still think reading is only for exam purposes, for academic purposes. That also has to be detoxicated. We need to first debunk that misconception for people then to understand why we read. Then thirdly, we are people that are still facing a lot of life challenges. And you are going to attest, all of us, that if you are faced with a competition of either to go and hustle to buy bread and butter or to spend that time reading, you're most likely going to choose the former. And that is also hard. So people are the economy is a hustle one. People hardly find time to read. Reading is for those who have settled everything else. I mean, you have your food ready, you have where you sleep. You don't need to hustle really hard to have those things. Then you have extra time to read. But someone like a taxi conductor, for example, a taxi driver, someone who rides a border will not find time to read. So those are things that we also have to appreciate in conversations about reading. Then lastly, is what I already alluded to when I was discussing context. Incentives for reading. Incentives for reading, and like Ms. Amelda already talked about, are things that we can do as parents. If you buy a 6-year-old a T-shirt with words like reader of the family, with the best reader of the week because they have read maybe a children's story, even if it is a paragraph. These are incentives that make them love what they do. They will go and play in the ground and tell them, my mom bought me a t-shirt or bought me shoes because I read a book. That is how we transfer the interest in such things. And those are things that parents can do at family level. Then the question, finally, technology has come to stay, and it is not a bad thing. It is not a bad thing because it has simplified life in so many ways. So the only thing we need to do is how do we internalize reading into technology so that we use technology as one of the incentives to propel reading among the population that we encourage to read. That is something that we cannot just decide and do because we feel it's nice. It's a policy question that demands our policymakers to understand why policies should reflect the same thing. So in technology policies, in education policies, then we need to make that a thing. Including at education level, if you don't have time to read outside that scope, then how do we then use what you have? And then also, I wanted to respectfully disagree with the gentleman at the extreme beginning. I don't think we are, a typical African youth is the one that spends all the time on TikTok or on social media and dancing and singing and whatever they do. I think, yes, there is a group of them that do that, but that is an unfair characterization of the potential in the African youth in relation to reading and writing. So maybe the message we should tell them is as you use your phone to post memes and to view a couple of statuses, you can use the same phone to actually read a book or to listen to a book. And the more we do that, the easier it is for us to encourage people to read, and technology to a great extent will simplify our work in making that a possibility. Thank you.
Maybe just as a follow-up question, in light of what you have just said, there is a notion that stipulates that if you cannot read, then you don't have the time or the tools to write. To what extent does our reading influence our writing skills?
Two things. It is not entirely true that if you cannot read, you cannot write. Because I just said a couple of minutes, sometimes we write out of the reflections in our own bodies, in our minds. We find some conflict happening with the way we approach ideas, what we have learned and what we already believe, and then we feel there should be some form of debate within us, and then we are finding ourselves writing them. You write them in form of tweets, for those who tweet. You write them on your statuses on WhatsApp or on your Facebook posts. Those are the emotions you're expressing, and the more you do that, you might find that if you sat down and collected them from last year this time, that will almost be 3 articles of what you have written in bits. So even if you don't necessarily read, you can actually write. But then why is it important to write from a reader's background? Because by the time you're writing, you're not just only expressing what you're thinking. You have gathered from author A, author B, author X, and then you're merging all their ideas, and then you're adding your perspective, then you're writing a better piece. So it means you're bringing voices of different people together, including your own, and you cause a debate in just one article or an essay. That is the importance of writing from a reader's background. So it is possible to write even when you don't necessarily read, but it is more important and more enriching to write after you have read. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. You are a student, I mean you are still in a school environment. Do these school environments promote reading beyond our academic scope? For example, do you have books that are not physics, chemistry in your libraries? And how does that affect your culture?
Thank you so much. My name is Wabule Salome Patience. I'm in Senior 5, and I'm in Cornerstone Leadership Academy. Responding to that, at our school they are there. There's the books that are in the library, except the ones that are supposed to be used academically. And I really think like they promote, but also it depends on the student's way of thinking about reading. Because you might find that someone goes to the library only to borrow maybe a history textbook, a physics textbook, and something like that. And most of the time, you can find that if you ask someone why she doesn't read outside her academics, she gives an excuse like, I don't have time, we have exams in maybe 2 weeks' time, all that. So she doesn't maybe create time for reading something outside of the academics, giving that excuse that she has to read for her what? For her exams and has to pass. But generally, I also would say, like, before I joined the school I am in right now, I wasn't a good reader. Like, I would not read anything above. In fact, I would end in class. Whatever I would read would be what the teacher has given. I would not even go to the library maybe to research on, maybe I have to read something outside what the teacher has read to improve on what I know. So basically, I would say, when I came to the school that I am in right now, I started reading even novels. I was even shocked that I could even read a novel and finish it. So most of the time, students in school, you sit, for you maybe think, I'm not a reader, I can't read. They have that thinking that they are not readers, something like that. So they only read to pass exams. So they give reading outside academics no importance. In fact, some students are even scared of books. You find a student, maybe you've got that novel in the library, and then that title really has moved you, but because of the size of the book, you are what? You get scared to start reading that book. But when I'm talking it from personal experience, once you start reading outside academics, you become more curious, because reading creates curiosity. You become more curious. You want to know this, you want to know that, you want to know this. And when I started reading even the novels that are outside academics, I started even wanting to know now, what don't I know about what the teachers in class? What hasn't the teacher said? So maybe if students embrace reading in school, like reading outside academics, will even promote their reading in the academics, because it even opens your mind. There's a way it just motivates you even to read in class, because sometimes you might be stressed, but instead of thinking of what is stressing you, you're thinking about that character you read in a novel, maybe the poem you read, and you're meditating about it. And then also, I would like to also add on that topic that I've been talking about technology, as like to promote reading. And I would say basically, technology has proven to be, sometimes it's a weakness and it's also a strength. And anything that comes in life always has weaknesses and always has strengths. Like, there are very many people who have benefited from the technology by creating apps that have earned money and all that. So that is maybe the strength. And to most youth right now, including me, it also turns out to be a weakness. There's a way when if you hold that phone, you don't want to move, you don't want anyone to even tell you anything. So it turns to a weakness. But most of the time in life also, you have to learn to use your weakness to be your what? Your strength. Because the fact that you sit on that phone and then read the text that someone has sent to you on what? On WhatsApp or maybe Facebook, or even send messages to you. You could also, instead of reading that text all the time, you could maybe download an app of maybe reading, whereby maybe you could say you read like maybe 2 pages a day, because most of the time you have to start small. So with time you'll even start improving. And then even when sometimes if people are to send maybe texts, you could send a text discussing with your friend maybe of what you have read, how you like the character, because most of the time when I read, I just bond with the characters that I read. So maybe you could talk about how you're bonded with that character, and you find that way you promote reading, making it fun, and it will also generate more, like encourage other people to also start reading instead of maybe sitting on TV and watching it all day.
Thank you very much. Sir, you talked about how a typical African youth is glued on their phones. But how did we arrive here in the first place? As a society, how did we arrive there? Because when we said typical African youth being glued on TikToks and all that, do you personally have you gone through our education system?
Yes.
Yes. Now, do you personally believe that our education system has been tailored to promote the reading culture? Because we could be blaming these youth who are glued on their phones without diagonizing on how we got there in the first place.
Thank you. First and foremost, like I said earlier, a lot happened in between. Not that Africa is a continent that didn't engage so much in reading and writing. But the post-colonial state and whatever it inherited in terms of education and the politics structure is not something that was supposed to help us. To the extent that the kind of education that we inherited is not a kind of education that we need in our context as Africans, basing on the realities that are unique to us. We need to charter our own way. So what happened? The advent of technology needed to awaken in our minds, and maybe for that of the leadership. My sister Imelda talked about policy and conceptual framework. I believe they didn't put so much premium there. Okay? We said, okay, we are inheriting this kind of education, let's go read. And at the turn of the millennium, there was competition on which school has produced 4s in primary, and 8 out of 8 in O-level, and then 25 points in A-level. So we began to gravitate towards reading to pass exams. Meanwhile, we detached ourselves from, we think life depended on reading and passing exam. So you did not create time to do extra and co-curricular activities. That included reading and debates. So it was only left to elite schools that would nurture talent in that aspect. So that is how we arrived here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that brief yet sound journey that we have moved. Mr. Elions, you are a political activist, and I believe and I subscribe to that belief that a society that doesn't read learns through experiences. To what extent would you, because as a country we are really in a bad place, let it be socially, politically, how would you blame our reading culture? What role do you think our reading culture has played in the tragedy we find ourselves in as a nation?
98%. And thank you for that question. I was hoping you will ask me something like that. And that gives me the energy to start the conversation a little bit. And if you will permit me to take a short detour on a memory lane, but also a concept lane, it's all about political activism. I am convinced, beyond any reasonable doubt, that there was a clique of Africans who were well-read, well-thought, and had a deeper grasp of nationalism and Pan-Africanism than we are. I'll cite examples and I'll speak to personalities this whole day. But the historians here and the forthcoming discussion, it is important that I say from the onset that I claim no expertise and I only project them as my thoughts that I hold, by the way, in high regard. That the historians inside there will tell us there was a time that we were enslaved for decades and decades of years. And we seldom say, and we sold, that the first people to take us out of this continent were the Arabs. And it's unfortunate that part of the country did not have very many Africans, because it was in the habit of the Arab slave trader to castrate the black African so that it doesn't produce. Oh, what a tragedy. So our story is not, our culture is not only rich, but our story is painfully untold. Therefore, to an African writer and reader, there's an unexploited area where you could read about, where you could write about, where you could talk about, and that which we could review. And that is not all. And yet the fact is that we have allowed those who hang our heroes to write our stories. So when we read about those who ended slavery, we read about William Wilberforce. We don't read about Harriet Tubman. We don't read about Marcus Garvey. But those are the true heroes who summoned their courage to do that which is not ordinary. Beyond, Martin Luther King said, a man has not started living if he's not identified what he can die for. Those who identified what they can die for. They had the clearest purpose. And Bob Marley sings of Marcus Garvey as being a buffalo soldier at the heart of America. We do not talk enough about those. We do not write enough about those. We do not read enough about those. And you see, I have come to be convinced that the most painful areas of life produce the strongest times. Somebody already said that hard times produce strong men. Strong men create easy times. Easy times produce weak men. We as a generation of the young people are a product of strong men, but we are weak men who will not create easy times. My best story in the Bible is of a man called Simon. When Jesus was born, Simon was told that the Lord has been born. He said, now I can die because the Lord has been born. Can the generation of the Honorable Elders die? Are they ready to die? Can they trust us with the next course? I want to think they cannot. Because I believe there was a clique of people who read, because without the reading, and I'll give you an example. When the colonialists came here, they took out Africans in their numbers. Numerous examples: Jomo Kenyatta, Julius Nyerere, Leopold Senghor of Senegal. A lot of people were taken out, thinking that they were creating small Frenchmen and small Portuguese. No, they created people who were coming to overthrow them. When they took out these people, I believe these people read to their best. And so they got a grasp it gave them purpose of nationalism and activism. And so when these people came back, and for me, many of them are to be admired and to be written and spoken about, but two people stand out. Julius Kambarage Nyerere of Tanzania. And my friend Odeke will love this, but Professor Lumumba describes him as a man that had the exactitude of prophecy of a Jewish prophet and had the humility of a Nazareth carpenter. So, because even before Tanzania got independence, the man told Jomo Kenyatta and Obote, who could not see like he did, that let us wait to get independence as a whole. Now, several years after, we're looking for the East African integration, yet we could have done it at this time. Another man that stands out is Kwame Osaje from Nkrumah. And as a resident of Nkrumah Hall, for me, it talks a lot, it is personal to talk about him. And Kwame Nkrumah in the 1963, Addis Ababa, where about 32 heads of state sat in Addis Ababa, hosted by then Emperor of Ethiopia, Haile Selassie. And many speeches were given that day, but one speech stood out. In fact, we'll be doing ourselves the service if we do not describe Kwame Nkrumah as a prophet. Kwame Nkrumah told us that the enemy, who is the white man, and for me, I said this without any fear of contradiction, and every time I say it, I say it with a deeper conviction, that the enemy, the white man, keeps coming in different forms. First came as the slave master, came as the colonialist, now has come as the new colonialist. And the man told us that for us to proceed, we need one army, one currency, and very many Africans have died who have tried to pursue that prophecy. It has not come to be true. And because of those strong men, we created easy times and produced a clique of African leaders. And our ultimate tragedy in Africa is the African politician. A fleet of 1,000 cars and gun salutes for one single man. And yet there's 1 million of them who can't even feed and who go hungry. So we created a clique of politicians and African politicians who feel like they're endowed divinely to rule others. Who feel like the nation owes them for the little they have done for the country. They do not appreciate how much sacrifice other people made to even give them the platform to be independent. And by the way, because I'm speaking to writers, I would like to say that we only... Yes, please. If I have to
interject, how then would you... Because among have in Uganda today, it's inclusive of our president. He has all this grasp of the whole history. So we really can't blame their doing on their lack of knowledge of the past. So it's not, is it now a question of really reading, therefore, that, because for me what I want you to draw is how our reading culture has affected us today.
Thank you. And like I did say, I was still taking the short detour into the memory lane. But because you have brought me here, I will now wish to proceed from there. Now, you see, if you cannot read beyond the classroom environment, you're an electrical engineering student to whom only the horsepower of an engine matters. The policies rolled out are not as important to you as they should be, because for you, or the science student, only pollination matters. Or to biology student, only the divisions in a cell matter to you. So we are having a clique. All I'm saying is we're having a clique of a generation of people who have not read so much to draw from the courage of our forefathers, who have not read enough to borrow and summon their courage like our forefathers, who have not read enough to appreciate how much the forefathers had put on the line. And they were faced even with more difficult challenges than they do now. You brought the president in the line, and I'll pass that for my safety. After what happened lately, I have come to be a very conservative man in terms of my words, and so I'll pass that. But I will stick to the fact that reading has so much to do, because the literature of what you read matters, though. But like somebody said, everybody should actually read. I think everybody should read, because reading is multidisciplinary. I think it's not limited to you being a lawyer. It's not because the conventional people think there are professions that should be reading. Maybe the country directors should be reading. Those in the ministry should be reading. But they then expect the engineer to only talk about the power of an engine, how much, what we need to do, what Elon Musk is doing right now with the cars and the braking and all that. But I think everybody should concern themselves. And Professor Lumumba says, a nation begins to slumber if its young people dissociate themselves from management of their society. But management of society, like to forge a way forward, I believe you must first appreciate what history had to offer, or politically where we are, or where we are coming from. And not just in the context of Uganda, but in the context of Africa as a whole. And when you do that and you read the right literature, you draw a lot of courage, a lot of inspiration from the personalities I already mentioned. And once you have that picture, like some of us, you then outgrow the fear of being suspended from Makerere University, because you know that Apollo Milton Obote was suspended for organizing a demonstration against bad food in Makerere University. That is when you come to appreciate what people have had to offer to bring us here. And then you escape the fear. Because people rule with fear. If you keep them poor, if you keep them fearful, you can easily control them. So political activism is impossible without the right reading. Political activism is misinformed and misdirected without the right reading. Political activism is misdirected and it is treaded upon without the right reading. We must go back and read. I don't care what we use, whether you use your phone or you read the old books, provided they're in soft copy and whatever. But we must go back and read, and just read and make reading an interest, and not just a hard thing to do. And read the right literature so that we can inform. We first go back and read what other people have done, how we even got here as a nation, and then summon our courage to forge a way forward and maybe become the Kwame Nkrumah prophets.
Thank you very much. You can pass on the microphone. To the generation that should hand over. Now, from the policy perspective, it's common song in Uganda today to have the best laid out policies on paper. But when it comes to implementation, we shall all agree that really no work is being done as far as literacy is concerned, yeah? So how do we close that gap? Because it's not the lack of policies anymore, so we cannot have a debate on whether which policies should come out and all that, because the policies are there and they have been tailored to meet today's demands. But then implementation is lacking. How do we close that gap?
Thank you so much. I wouldn't want to say that there is no implementation. That is an overstatement. Maybe the right statement would be that implementation is not to the dot. Yes, the expected. In as far as literacy is concerned in Uganda, we have a number of policies actually across the different ministries, because actually literacy is not a one ministry activity. So you find that across different ministries, we have different forms of literacies. You can mention education, talk about Ministry of Gender, talk about agriculture, talk about health, talk about water and environment, everybody, and ICT and national guidance, and others, including the Ministry of Trade, because they have cooperatives, so they educate people on how to save and all those. So you find that the issues of literacy are across a wide spectrum. And it's not only across the ministries, but also in the civil society and also the private sector. I'm sure you have seen very many adult schools around Uganda. I see one in Old Kampala, I see one at near Usafi, where there is that primary school. Even here in Makerere, I think we have centers for learning. But many of the centers, for example, when we talk about adult learning, many of those centers have been put for purposes of people now rejoining the formal system so that they can get degrees. So actually, as a country, I want, without running away from your question, I'll come back to it, but I want to come back and say that in Uganda, we so very much want to get academic papers. That is one of the challenges. He mentioned it, Mr. Deke mentioned it, that people are looking at, at the end of the day, I want to say I have a PhD, okay? Without even showing the value it is creating for my country and even sometimes to myself. So we take reading or literacy as something that is going to drive us to get paper qualification. But of what use is that literacy? In as far as development is concerned, at personal level, community level, national level, and even beyond the nation, because we are hearing about regional integration, the African vision, international framework, the SDG4s. So coming back to your question, very many programs that we have, universal primary education, post-primary education, which is also free, talk about the adult learning programs that we do conduct. What is missing is for the policy, when we talk about policy making, we have different levels. We have the people who are the top policymakers, who are the politicians. I wouldn't want to say that maybe they are the ones who are lacking the vision. They have the vision, but information is very powerful. So if you are leading somebody who is well-informed.
If I'm to interject, when you talk about the top politicians being the top policymakers, realistically, on a scope of 1 to 10, how many of our politicians read?
That one I will not answer. People will answer. Very many people have different answers. What I wanted to drive at home is that in Uganda, much as we have very many literacy programs across the ministries and in every place, the whole issue goes back to the literacy that is embedded in transforming the community. We have literacies that are theoretical, literacies that are not addressing the real needs of the country. Because even when you look at for example, why are they, even in universities, they are trying to remove some courses. Why are we even talking about sciences, and we want to say even arts are useless? It's because as a country, we need to define ourselves in terms of what literacy do we need if we are transformed. The literacies that some of the countries actually, who were at our level in the 60s, talk about the Asian countries, those tigers, they were at the same level like us. But what did they do? What button did they touch? They promoted community learning. They promoted lifelong learning. And for them, learning is for everybody. whether in school or out of school, in every space where you are, learning has taken place continuously and lifelong. So the solution that we have is not a policy, but we need to now go back to the roots and say what policy is going to create change. So there's very many actors that are leading the different programs. Can we coordinate all of them so that they are focused towards transforming the country? Other than having a policy for the sake of it, people go through education, people go through different levels, but at the end of the day, they are not creating impact on ground. And for us, from the community development aspect, we actually say everybody needs to learn, but learning that is related to improving your livelihood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm being told that our time is out, so I will ask you in just 2 minutes, kindly. You're from the drama?
Yes.
Yeah? So speak to how we could use arts in 2 minutes, how we could use arts to promote our reading culture. Then Lester will speak about how we can use technology to improve our reading culture, and then she can speak about the young people.
Wow, using arts. I don't think I've ever found any tool as powerful as the arts, because it directly creates a connection between how it started up from the African perspective of passing on information, using song, using dances, using storytelling, you know. So it directly connects. That is what we are trying to bridge. I happen to be part of an agency called Tingly Tours and Youth Transformed. We do theater for schools. It is also theater for development as part of the courses that are taught here at Makerere, Department of Performing Arts and Film. And so what are we saying? This is a tool that can easily relate with people. This is a tool to which people easily respond and are able to express themselves. And what are we saying? Can we easily make it accessible? One, we tour different schools. We've performed Return of Mogofu before. We've performed Lion and the Jewel before. We've performed quite a number of literature set books. And for us, what we are saying is, in as much as we are adding a dramatic approach to it, you know, for the students to name it, several reasons, get a better understanding of the play and everything, we are also trying to show these students that, you know what, with the arts, there is actually potential for you to grow as a person. There is potential for you to have an impact on the society that you're coming from. There is also a potential for you to add onto a brick to nation development. We stand in to inspire. Most of us are here because of the different books that we interact with. Most of us are here because of what we've read. Some of us have been able to meet the several writers along the way here and there, the books that we are interacting with over there, and even the collection of poetry, the poets that we've interacted with here. This is a whole package of the creative industry. This is a whole package of the arts. And what are we saying? Can we inspire? Because we can. Can we create an impact? We can. And can we change the mindset? There is nothing as powerful as the arts. And we are saying we can draw from the arts, we can powerfully expand potential and create awareness and build that bridge of reading culture in the lives of the youths. Thank you.
Thank you once again, Regan. On technology and how, especially at our times, how we can use that then to read more and maybe write more and encourage other people to read and write. I will speak some of the things I already said, I think, when I just come in. See, the thing about reading is that it is the principle, right? If we understand the principal reason why we should really read, then we can use anything at our disposal to then read. So understanding the principle behind reading is very important. And it starts as early as possible from policy, from education policy, from family policy. Then if we want to bring up a community of young readers, people that will then grow when they love reading and they know why they read, it becomes easier for us to convince them not to post memes, for example, for the rest of the day, and maybe read a book when they have a phone. So it is the principal reason for reading that has not really sunk in our minds yet. One of the behavioral psychologists that I follow so much is in one of his books, Dr. Gadside said in his book, The Parasitic Mind, that ideas are some form of neuropathogens that corrupt our minds. If the ideas are bad, then the same treatment that a parasite has on the host when it eats up the host alive is the same thing that ideas that are pathological, it's the same thing that they do to our minds. So if we allow our young people to get exposed to pathological ideas, then it becomes hard for us to inculcate anything important, including reading, right? So that means it begins with what we expose our kids to as early as possible. Then as young adults, youth, what we expose ourselves to, and the influence that has in our ability to be able to engage with other important things, including reading. So that is why it becomes, if I have a phone, a smartphone, and I have access to the internet, it becomes easier for me to maybe decide to maybe watch a very silly movie or something on Netflix and maybe not use the same time to read a book about Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, or Kwame Nkrumah and the rest of them. So if the principle sinks in, then we can then use technology in the best way that we can. So, and also, technology is costly, but also it is cheap if you know how to use it. I mean, the same money we spent on data is the same money we can spend on the same data to get a book, either buy it or download it from the internet and read it. So I just want to share a few things from experience, because I do both reading physically and I listen to books, and I also read them in soft copy, sometime on my laptop or my phone. And time is not on our side, but then you find how to put all your important things within the 24 hours that you have. So, and that use of technology has personally simplified my process of reading, because, for example, if I am in a taxi coming from Entebbe to attend a conference here, I am listening to an audiobook, okay? There are applications that do that. If I am seated in a taxi and I want to read, I have access to e-books, and I'm reading a book on my phone, right? So if you've decided, if the principle has sunk in, if the principle has been allowed by all the pathological ideas to which we are exposed, then we can read. So we need to do so much in making people understand why they should read, and then they will find it easier to use everything at their disposal to read. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Give us perspective on how you believe young people can be helped to develop the culture of reading.
Yeah, I would also speak like in a way that they would also encourage me myself to promote my reading skills. So first of all, is to change the perspective that most of them have about reading, and show them that reading as a culture is worth it. It's worth sitting down and reading a book. It's not a waste of time, because some people think reading is of no importance except if you're benefiting from it academically. So you should give them that perspective that sitting down and reading a book is not bad, or rather it's even more, it's very benefiting to your brain, though you're even not actively involved, but your brain is very involved. So giving importance to reading. And then also changing this, saying that writing and reading is a talent. I don't believe writing and reading is a talent. I believe writing and reading is something that it's a passion, it's a connection that can be developed only if you invest your time and hard work. Just to show them that once you put your time in investing your writing skills, because when you read, you're able to write even better, because writing is giving out what you have connected to, what you have learned, and what you want the world to see. So it's something that you can develop with time and hard work, and with time it becomes even a habit. You just feel like you should even write more and more so that the world should know what goes on inside. And then also, reading, the way I also see it, it introduces us to new characters. Though, because I would say, like, particularly me, I'm not a person who's exposed or what, because even at some point I even got lost here. But with my reading, if I start interacting with someone, you can think, oh, I have seen very many people, because at home, I wouldn't say my parents are overprotective, but they're that kind of people whereby you have to sit home, like be home, don't go anywhere. But with reading, I'm able to meet very many people. I see very many people, because as you're reading, you get those visual pictures of how that person would have been. So if you meet that person, like, physically next time and you meet that person, a kind of character that connects to the one you read about, you're able to even interact better. So I think reading also exposes someone and gives someone a whole new experience of that, the thing that he or she does not have. And I think that's all I can say.
Thank you very much. We shall now take questions from the audience. We have some questions online, and our MC is going to take us through them. The questions can be directed to one of the panelists or to the whole panel. Okay, we shall begin with the online questions. Then a microphone can be moving in the audience. We shall take about 3-4 questions. And our panelists are going to use only 1 minute to respond to those questions. Thank you.
Very much. It's actually just one question that is directed to Madame Imelda. And the question says, the others are just appreciation. I won't go into them. So Brian Maz is asking, she's saying, I would like to know what the lady from Ministry of Gender says about the government's advocacy of reading culture. Yeah.
I will request the panelists to note down those questions. They will answer. We are only taking 4 questions from the audience, so I see. Okay, let us make it brief. If someone asks a question you wanted to ask, please don't repeat the same question, okay? You address the question to a particular panelist so that they can note it down, and then later on they will be able to answer.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. My name is Festo Kato. I'm a member of Readers Africa. I've been in so many mentorship spaces. I've mentored even around Readers Africa. I've mentored with Garang. And my question will go directly to the CEO, Met, about mentorship. I've been in spaces where if you've mentored someone, they reach a point where they start to speak like you, or even they want to repeat your statements just to make them look relevant. Some members here might have noticed some content from PLO Lumumba flow all through the conversation here. So I want to understand, how do we as mentors, because at least I'm older than some of these, I'm turning 27 very soon. How do we as mentors teach our own mentees to be themselves and not take on the image that we have or the knowledge that we try to share, but they learn to teach themselves where we are not? Garang can also expound on that, but it is directed to the CEO, Met Media. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mine is not a question, but I was quite fascinated by the idea of introducing reading at the foundation. And I wanted to throw more light on it with the idea of living and breathing literature. Parents can take in the initiative of making homes more of literature. Introduce your child to literature at the very, very young stage. Because reading is a prerequisite to most of the activities that these children are going to engage in. Something as small as drinking, they'll need to learn it from somewhere. Maybe they've seen a cartoon doing that, or something like taking on some other pieces of writing. They will have picked it from somewhere. So because it is a prerequisite for all the activities that they will need to engage in, that is why they will need to take it on at a gradual stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I would like to direct my question to Madam Imelda. Like it has been said by most of the panelists that for reading to be embraced more in Africa, it's more of a mindset change among the young people to embrace reading and take it as something important, not just for academic purposes. So I would ask you, Madam, how do you think that mindset change can be implemented among the young people?
We shall only take in 2 more.
Thank you. Mine is directed to Alliance Lawrence. You mentioned something about political activism is impossible without reading. But my question is, speaking as a youthful person, I think it's not only in the space of political activism. I think, just like Madame Imelda said, she says implementation of literacy policies is actually available in the government. But I feel as a young person, our problem is that young people are not forming leadership circles to check in for those services available to, like speaking of organization or startups that are providing publishing in the country. Some of the organizations supporting the event today, I see one that is actually involved in publishing, Readers Africa and maybe National Culture Forum, but I don't see many publishing houses, organizations that are involved with publishing African writing here. So my question to you is that, do you really think it's only political activism that is impossible, or it's actually a glaring problem among, how do we, I think it's a problem with forming leadership among youth to go ask for the implementation of these policies. Do you think that's true?
Okay, we shall take in only 1 more. At the okay, there are those 2 gentlemen there. Their hands have been up. And then...
Hello, everyone. I'm Ilem Rodney, commonly known as Ilem Nyongo. I'm a political scientist and at the same time a researcher. And as a researcher, I am exposed to books of different kinds, but at the same time, I would like to put this across. It wouldn't be a question, but it's a fact. Africa contributes 0.1% to knowledge production. That would be in terms of research. And that only shows how limited we are in terms of what we read and what we write down. And most times what we write down is just, it's below, should I say, the threshold. The fact that we don't see any difference. Everyone writes something that is not anything scary or something that can really predispose us to other forms of knowledge. So the knowledge production in Africa is scary. At the same time, it only shows that we are not giving out our best. And I would also like to talk about the education system, just as Comrade had talked about in terms of what we got after independence. It's right that the education system that we have right now is scary. It is distorted. And in that fact, we realize that we are producing more of employee or like employment seekers than people can research and bring out something. Because it's research that makes universities unique. And that can also change societies. And research only shows that we are we are exposed to books, not only books, because many of you here might have been reading, but you've been reading a lot of erroneous knowledge. So that is also something that I would want you guys to talk about. Are you really knowing the knowledge you are consuming? Because in the matter of how we look at how you guys are talking, we can also understand the knowledge you have consumed and to what level. Because you can be a reader of almost all kinds of books, but do you know how to differentiate what is authentic and what is just erroneous? Is also a question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Only one more, and make it as brief as possible.
Good morning, everyone. I'm called Vincent. Sorry, I came in late. My question is will be directed to our panelists from gender. Now, in 2015, the nation of Singapore launched the National Reading Movement. And this was basically to create a reading culture, a reading class in the nation, and make reading a national culture. Coming back to motherland, how deliberate, or has our state had an honest and deliberate discussion about making reading a national culture? Because when we look at, this is the biggest university in the country, but at a reading conference, you can see the attendance. So how deliberate is our nation in creating a culture of readers and reading? I loved what she said about parents creating spaces within their homes for the children to make it a literature environment. I came with my daughter. This is my firstborn. She'll be making 4 years soon, and she loves to read. And it will be really bad if I create an environment for her to be able to read and to become a reader, and when she gets out there, there are no spaces for readers in the different parts of the nation, and it is not a culture. So how deliberate and how honest is the state in making reading a national culture in Uganda? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have the questions that were directed to the ministry, and I think there were about 3, 4.
Excuse me, Regan. If you could allow me just read one more online. Barbara Karibira asks, what stage should reading start? We want to have any other person respond to that.
Okay. We shall probably direct Mr. Odeke. So we are only going to take about 1 minute per question. That means if you have the 4, then 4 minutes are enough. Yeah. We'll be as brief as possible.
Thank you so much. Obviously, I expected many questions. Normally, where people see government representative, that's where the focus goes. But it's okay, because it's only a government that has a social contract with its citizens to deliver services. So I want to thank all the people who have asked questions. The 2 questions are related. The one of Brian about government advocating for a reading culture, and then the one that has been asked by my brother, who is present, relating Uganda to Singapore, and he said how deliberate and honest is our country promoting the reading culture. Thank you so much. Number 1, I think Uganda takes cognizance of the fact that Ugandans have a poor reading culture. That is the first step. By recognizing that there is a problem, it is the beginning of looking for a solution. And we have, I think, already had the causes why people do not read. He talked about hustling, others talked about the need for passing exams, and very many other reasons. But there are also other reasons relating to access, especially for me coming from the background of youth and adult learning. Access in terms of getting the material that is in the content that you want, but also in the format that you can actually read it. Because if I do not know English and you give me a content that is in English, I can't read it. So government already is aware that there is a problem, but there are also other challenges that are associated. Number one, in terms of providing a solution, I think all of you are aware that government has, of recent, changed the curriculum. It began with primary level curriculum, but it was not as evident as for secondary. So for the students who are in senior 1 and senior 2, we have a new curriculum, and that curriculum is more of learner-centered than teacher-centered. By being learner-centered, this curriculum is actually encouraging the students, or how they are called, the learners, to do research on their own. A concept is introduced by the facilitator. They are no longer called teachers. They are facilitators. So you introduce a concept, and then you give activities. They are not even assignments or what? Activities. Yes. So by focusing on the learner has the responsibility of researching on the concept that has been introduced. And in that way, the learners have to read. And what is more interesting is that I happen to be having a learner in senior 1. And one of the intriguing things is that once they read and they are given activities, they are even asked to provide solutions to the problems that society is facing. So from an English lesson, a history lesson, geography lesson, somebody is providing a solution for waste, for example, waste management. So you can just imagine, it's not science, it's not what everybody is thinking is going to solve Uganda's problems. But then from an activity in English, they are coming up with very practical solutions for our country's problems. So in changing the curriculum, government is addressing the issues of reading culture because the learners have to read about the concepts. Number two, government is providing reading materials. And I think with the new curriculum that is given, that even the publishers are not selling books. Many of the books that are being used are now coming from the National Curriculum Development Center. And all the libraries are well stocked. But I think in addition to also those curriculum-related materials, school libraries are also stocked with other materials, like novels, to encourage students to read. And also, on the other hand, is that government encourages parents to also participate in enabling their children to read. And that's why from our ministry, actually, we have the adult learning programs. Those programs are supposed to, they are second chance programs to enable the adults who missed the chances of learning when they were young, so that they can be able to acquire the literacy and numeracy skills so that they can support their children as they learn. Obviously, if you do not appreciate learning, you cannot support it. But once a parent appreciates learning and they see what they've been missing, they do not want their children to suffer the same challenge. So in that way, government is using a multi-pronged approach to address issues of reading. And I think we might not be already at the level of Singapore, but we normally have the reading week. Normally, when you are passing at City Square, I think you've seen, since you are interested in reading, you will be getting, I think as you are passing, you have to read, but maybe the issue would be popularizing it. Yes, because I think it happens every year. And it is organized by the ministry, but in partnership with the local governments. For KCCA, I'm very sure it is always at the City Square. For other districts, maybe we need to explore, but what I know is that we have a reading week. My sister, my daughter here, she asked about the issue of mindset. And she said reading has to be, for reading to be embraced, it has to be in the mindset issues have to be addressed, and what are we doing about it? The issue of mindset is a very big issue, not only for reading, but for every aspect of life. And as government of Uganda, we have a full program under the National Development Plan 3 that is talking about community mobilization and mindset change. Yes. So what we focus on is not only for reading, but generally, as a country, much of what has been holding us back is poor mindset, where people are waiting for government to hope. And actually, they normally call it government equality, etuyambe. Yes, so there is a drive because that is a full program area, and it has different ministries that report on it, but it is coordinated by our ministry, the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development. And it is the one that is even working on issues of patriotism, leadership, all that. So reading, since we already have reading programs. And for your information, actually, what we have done for us under adult learning, when we talk about adult, we begin with youth who are 18 years. Because if you have not enrolled in P1 and you are 18, you can't enroll in most cases. So we have a new program that is called the Community Learning Centers, that we want to revamp the community centers that were there in the 60s. And these community centers are at the parish level, and their purpose is to enable the communities to access information. When we talk about community, we are talking about all ages. I told you we are promoting lifelong learning. And at the Community Learning Center, we have a section that has to cater for issues of reading materials and information access with even internet. So far, we've been piloting, and we have 11 community learning centers, which are already operational. And we think once it has been funded, it is going to be rolled out to the whole country. And everybody is welcome to go to the community learning center, not only to read, but also to access the required knowledge that we hope we have local solutions for local problems. Thank you.
We shall now have Mr. Odeke answer his question in 1 minute, and then we shall close with you.
Thank you so much. I say, you know, the listener asked on social media, I don't know which platform they're watching from, but at what age should the child start reading? You know, from my context, I started interfacing with the books through my mother and brothers who would actually read to me, okay? And I began reading from my mother tongue, the books which were written in my mother tongue, including the Bible. So what my mother would do was to read to me stories, like Juma the lorry driver. I got to know them even before I learned how to read. So at what age? I believe at the age a child is able to understand. But even you don't need to first introduce them to text. You read to them stories. My book of Bible stories, I got to know before I could even read and write. I got to know something that would later on turn out to be a book by Charles Dickens, The Tale of Two Cities, written around 1859, during that time of the French Revolution. So there's a sense in which if you're introduced to what is written through your parents or your mentors, your guardians, reading for you, that's how you interface and fall in love. When I came here, I was wondering, what does a scientist like me have to say in a group of artists? But I'm happy that my colleague, Leon J, I learned that's how they pronounce his name. He's an engineer. Me, I am a student of computer science. But this African Readers Conference, when I looked at the theme, I saw it as an intersection of the sciences and the arts. Something talks about digitalization. That is now my world of computer. And the other one talks about reading and writing. That is arts. So we cannot say that arts and sciences are like the right arm and the left arm. So that is my understanding. So on the other side, leaders are readers. All readers are leaders. Whichever way you want to take it, but it is the plain truth. I believe some of us who undertook sciences, if we had decided that we don't read or we don't do what, we wouldn't be where we are right now as leaders. So there is a sense in which you're supposed to look at reading and writing. Don't only leave it for people who do arts or what. So I found myself reading through. I read a lot, from literature to religion to mathematics, logic, all topics. So when you find me telling you something about The Lion and the Jewel written by Wole Soyinka, you don't worry about that. The grain, literature from West Africa, Kenya. I love African literature, and I've read extensively, and I've fallen in love with the reading. Thank you so much. I believe as a government, and then as the student leaders, there is need to align ourselves with, number one, Vision 2040, and then there are SDGs, 17 of them I implore you to read, and then we have African Agenda 2063. All these lay foundation on what needs to be done in respect to harnessing literacy in our society. And I also loved what my sister Imelda talked about, that the government has a social contract with its own citizens. And I believe the culture of reading and literacy will take a multi-pronged approach that encompasses the family, encompasses the school, and the wider community. And that's, and by extension, the government. And that's how we are going to patch up things and come up with whatever we want to have going forward. I recommend a book written by Jami Suskain. It's a book called The Digital Republic on the Freedom and Democracy in the 21st Century. I thank you so much. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. We shall have closing. He will close us off. So we go for our next. Kindly use 1 minute.
Okay,
the next session is about to start.
I just want to add on something very small that my brother here has talked about the age of introducing a young child. You know, we read with our eyes, with our ears, and at a deeper level of reading, you begin feeling the emotions. And that is the thing about children. We can really never tell the actual age. But have you seen children mimicking their parents on phones? You know? So this is what we are saying. We cannot tell the actual age. But when a child sees a parent doing something, when he or she sees a parent reading a book, tomorrow you're going to find that child busy as if she's reading. That is the step to everything. So read as a parent. Read as a person. Have books around. Have all those materials if you can access them. And trust me, before you know it, the child herself will be a reader, and you won't be able to tell the actual age that he or she even picked up the reading culture from. Yeah? I don't know if I'm to respond to any question. There was a question about mentorship, though.
Yeah. If you could use just 1 minute.
From my experience, mentoring poetry performance, stage and page, and then also actors and all that, we find that so much. An actor, you know, and at the end of the day, you're like, but you're acting like so-and-so. But you're performing poetry like so-and-so and all that. So the mentee is connected with the mentor, and how much is open to receive what the mentor is providing for him. I honestly feel that as far as personal development is concerned and finding your own voice, because it is one of the things that we are dealing with. What is the voice of an African? So the journey is under evolve to discover who yourself is. And the only way that you're going to do it is by reading. I do not care what you read. I do not care which particular material you pick up to read, but for me, I say for myself, that only means to discover who I am, because on a daily basis as a learner, I believe we need to get closer to as many mentors as possible. But when you're there back and you're by yourself, what are you doing? One of the things to discover about who you are, your voice, your style, is by reading. That is what I can say regarding
Thank you very much. There was a question on political activism. He will close us off.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the undeserved opportunity to close it myself. And I will close with an answer to that, but also with a wonder. Share in the wonder of my brother that why would I be invited here? I first thought it was a political forum for me to come and battle with my fellow contestants. It was a conference on those who read, and I'm still surprised, though. I will ask you guys after here why I was invited, but then still I will stick to say that everybody should read. And in fact, most times people think when you're science, probably you shouldn't read. I went to my place of internship recently, and my colleague called me Dangote, and the internship supervisor said, so you're Dangote, and you also do engineering. So there was that context and that partition they had for people. But the simple answer is that you're right. Those who had you, whether the syndrome of the shrinking space or culture of reading does only affect political activism. I think the answer is no, it does affect several other areas. I narrowed down to political activism because that is what he asked. And I wanted to stay relevant. I wanted to stay relevant to the question. But I think you're right, and if there are other measures like you recommend that can be taken, like the publishing and the leadership circles and organizations, those will do us a great deal. But I narrowed down because he asked me in that particular area. Thank you.
Thank you very much, our panelists. Thank you very much, the audience. We shall now hand over to the MC to take us through the next session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you very much for taking your time to be part of this panel discussion. And the moderator, thank you for your time, your commitment. The audience, we thank you so much. And the people online, we've been seeing your comments and your questions, and it's all amazing. Yeah, some of the points that we shouldn't forget from this panel discussion in regards to reading innovations is one, family literacy. It has to be brought up and established. Early childhood literacy, incentives for reading, and reading should not only be linked to academics, it should be put outside the scope of education. Mindsets change from Salome, who I'm so in love with, the young student who was on the panel. And then also there's a big role for parents to play in encouraging the reading culture. And then mentorship and so many other important points that they brought up. Thank you all of you for being part of this. And I'm going to ask the organizers, Jeremy, Scovia, someone should come and take the seats, the plastic seats, as we go to the next part on the program. So we are going to be having next on our program a performance from Alex Chitaka. But he was on the panel, so we are going to give him like 3-4 minutes for him to prepare. And then he comes, cheers us up, makes us smile, anything. Yeah, so let's just be ready for him. And as we wait for Alex Chitaka, how many writers do we have in the house? If you're a writer, raise your hand. Okay, that's nice. So this is what we are going to do. Like I told you, I attended a session by Ngugi wa Thiong'o some time back, and he was mentioning some of his tactics when it comes to writing. Like, what do you do as a writer to get motivated? Or what is your discipline? Or what is your discipline as a writer? So for him, he says he's a very disorganized writer. If you organize his table, like where he writes from, all his ideas will just skip his what? His mind. So that kind of chaos on his table kind of gives him like direction whenever he's doing what? Whenever he's writing. So, the writers in the house, tell us some of your habits. Some of those good habits. Do you have to walk around the room like this for you to get an idea? Do you have to look at a picture? Do you have to sing a song? Do you have to first dance around and jump around? What are some of your habits, your disciplines, anything? There's someone here, please. There's someone? Yeah, share with us.
Okay, thank you very much. For me, when I don't plan to write. I just find myself writing. So in most cases, I've taken time to study myself. In most cases, for me to think that I should now write, maybe I sit somewhere in a cool place. I feel like, oh, now I should write. Then maybe if someone passes and I notice something about her, I write. Yeah, so even if maybe we were in a previous lesson and maybe a teacher talked about something,
how I attended the General Assembly, how I paid my dues. Remember this dirty rainwater that only passed once. This shadow that strong light caused to cast a shadow. Remember me as one of the toads in the back seat of the lake choir. Not that I added, not for what I added, but for what I did not remove. For when the curtain of darkness hid the audience from heaven, there were options I did not choose. They say the future will grow fatter, that even hope has a hope that it will get better. So remember me, those who make a list of those to forget, not because those who make a list of who to forget, not because I was all white, but because I wasn't all black. For none of my plans have completed its 9 months, so I have nothing to tell those who will tell others. Remember me, though like the firefly I may not be bright, I have gone as far as my umbilical cord will allow. I have plowed with words and sowed. I have plowed with words the seeds. I should lead my country if hope casts the votes. But alas, so remember me. I have pulled in fast-flowing streams where tilapia go for dates. I have stumbled on wildflowers that no eye has deflowered, and played with time alone, for I was grandma's flower. I pause my life to show others their pause button. So when you have finished naming high flyers, remember me. They say there is still time, but no one can never be sure. So I just stopped by to remind you to remember me.
Nice. I hope you're remembered.
I hope so.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I find myself reading this over and over again because the time I wrote it is a time that was really dark, and I just felt so alone.
Yeah.
But that is how writing comes, and that is how pieces are generated. Thank you.
Thank you to Emotions. Okay, so now let's have Alex Chitaka come on stage with his performance.
Among the 20 snowy mountains, the only moving thing was the eye of the blackbird. As made of three minds, like a tree in which there are three black birds. The blackbird whistled in the autumn wind, and that was a small part of a pantomime. A man and a woman are one. A man and a woman and the blackbird are one. And I do not know which to prefer, the beauty of inflections or the beauty of innuendos, the blackbird whistling or just after. Icicles filled a broken window with a barbaric glass. The shadow of the blackbird kept crossing it, to and fro, and the mood pressed on the shadow an indecipherable pause. Oh, thin men of Adam, why do you imagine golden bars? Do you around the feet of the women about you? Do you not see how the blackbird flies around the feet of the women about you? I know of noble accents, of lucid and inescapable rhythms, but I also know too that the blackbird is involved in what I know. The blackbird flying
mark the age of one of many. The black birds flying in the green light. Even the birds of Ifane would cry out sharply, "Oh, the men of Adam, why do you imagine golden birds? Do you not see how the black bird flies around the women, flies about your feet of the women about you? Do you not see that?" And then the black bird landed over Connecticut in a glass couch, and once a fear pierced him, for which he mistook for his epithet for the black bird. Oh, thin men of Adam, why do you imagine golden birds? Do you not see how the black bird flies around the feet of the women about you? See, the river is flowing, and the black bird must be flying. It was all evening, all afternoon. It was snowing. Oh, it was just about to snow. And the black bird sang. The black bird squat in the city. Thin men of Adam, do you not see how the black bird flies around the feet of the woman? Do you not see how the black bird flies around the feet of the women? You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may drop me in the very dark, but still like dust, I'll rise. Does my sustenance upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? Because I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like the moons and the suns, with the certainty of the tides, just like hopes springing so high, still I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken? Bowed head and lowered shoulders. Tears, shoulders, tears falling down. Shoulders falling down and tears broken by my soulful pride. Does my boldness offend you, or do you find it awfully hard that I love? That I love like I've got the hand digging in my own backyard. See, you may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still like dust, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Or does it come as a surprise that I dance? That I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? See, up from the heights of decision, I rise. Up from a past rooted in pain, I rise. I am a black ocean, living and wide, swelling and welling, I bear it high. I rise. I rise leaving behind nights of terror and fear. I rise into a day that is wondrously clear. I rise bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. For I am the hope and the dream of every slave. I rise. I rise.
You've had, Mshareh.
Thank you very much, Alex, for your performance. Like you already said, it's a creative And then you come right in, we use like 20 minutes, then you come back inside for the last panel discussion. Yeah? Let's do this, guys.
High People remains one of Uganda's and indeed Africa's most dynamic brands and organizations. The innovations and initiatives are increasingly renowned for their positive impact towards transforming lives and livelihoods around the continent. Our annual High People Music Awards are recognized not just for their critical acclaim and prestige that they bestow on their winners and nominees, but as one of the longest serving awards and celebration. We are proud to grow from strength to strength, celebrating and transforming brand to brand, name to name. A number of artists have grown to influence millions of Ugandans and Africans as a whole. Remarkably, the story we started as a digital online store to distribute and share content that was locally brewed and created by our indigenous Africans has turned out into a livelihood of every creator of content, be it music, film, drama, TV, name it. The 11th edition comes with thankfulness. It's been quite a journey. We thank our long-standing partners that have kept believing in transforming the music industry and the creative arts industry using digitization. We also thank God, our longest serving sponsor, for making this happen every single year. I'm proud and excited to let you know that the nominations for the 11th High People Music Awards are now open for every one of us to suggest and bring forward the most outstanding acts and artists that made our year. High People remains one of Uganda's and indeed Africa's most dynamic brands and organizations. The innovations and initiatives are increasingly renowned for their positive impact towards transforming lives and livelihoods around the continent. Our annual High People Music Awards are recognized not just for their critical acclaim and prestige that they bestow on their winners and nominees, but as one of the longest serving awards and celebration. We are proud to grow from strength to strength, celebrating and transforming brand to brand, name to name. A number of artists have grown to influence millions of Ugandans and Africans as a whole. Remarkably, the story we started as a digital online store to distribute and share content that was locally brewed and created by our indigenous Africans has turned out into a livelihood of every creator of content, be it music, film, drama, TV, name it. The 11th edition comes with thankfulness. It's been quite a journey. We thank our long-standing partners that have kept believing in transforming the music industry and the creative arts industry using digitization. We also thank God, our longest serving sponsor, for making this happen every single year. I'm proud and excited to let you know High People remains one of Uganda's and indeed Africa's most dynamic brands and organizations. The innovations and initiatives are increasingly renowned for their positive impact towards transforming lives and livelihoods around the continent. Our annual High People Music Awards are recognized not just for their critical acclaim and prestige that they bestow on their winners and nominees, but as one of the longest serving awards and celebration. We are proud to grow from strength to strength, celebrating and transforming brand to brand, name to name. A number of artists have grown to influence millions of Ugandans and Africans as a whole. Remarkably, the story we started as a digital online store to distribute and share content. High People remains one of Uganda's and indeed Africa's most dynamic brands and organizations. The innovations and initiatives are increasingly renowned for their positive impact towards transforming lives and livelihoods around the continent. Our annual High People Music Awards are recognized not just for their critical acclaim and prestige that they bestow on their winners and nominees, but as one of the longest serving awards and celebration. We are proud to grow from strength to strength, celebrating and transforming brand to brand, name to name. A number of artists have grown to influence millions of Ugandans and Africans as a whole. Remarkably, the story we started as a digital online store to distribute and share content that was locally brewed and created by our indigenous Africans has turned out into a livelihood of every creator of content, be it music, film, drama, TV, name it. The 11th edition comes with thankfulness. It's been quite a journey. We thank our long-standing partners that have kept believing in transforming the music industry and the creative arts industry using digitization. We also thank God, our longest-serving sponsor, for making this happen every single year. I'm proud and excited to let you know that the nominations for the 11th High People Music Awards are now open for every one of us to suggest and bring forward the most outstanding acts and artists that made our year. High People remains one of Uganda's and indeed Africa's most dynamic brands and organizations. The innovations and initiatives are increasingly renowned for their positive impact towards transforming lives and livelihoods around the continent. Our annual High People Music Awards are recognized not just for their critical acclaim and prestige that they bestow on their winners and nominees, but as one of the longest serving awards and celebration. We are proud to grow from strength to strength, celebrating and transforming brand to brand, name to name. A number of artists have grown to influence millions of Ugandans and Africans as a whole. Remarkably, the story we started as a digital online store to distribute and share content that was locally brewed and created by our indigenous Africans has turned out into a livelihood of every creator of content, be it music, film, drama, TV, name it. The 11th edition comes with thankfulness. It's been quite a journey. We thank our long-standing partners that have kept believing in transforming the music industry and the creative arts industry using digitization. We also thank God, our longest-serving sponsor, for making this happen every single year. I'm proud and excited to let you know that the nominations for the 11th High People Music Awards are now open for every one of us to suggest and bring forward the most outstanding acts and artists that made our year. High People remains one of Uganda's and indeed Africa's most dynamic brands and organizations. The innovations and initiatives are increasingly renowned for their positive impact towards transforming lives and livelihoods around the continent. Our annual High People Music Awards are recognized not just for their critical acclaim and prestige that they bestow on their winners and nominees, but as one of the longest serving awards and celebration. We are proud to grow from strength to strength, celebrating and transforming brand to brand, name to name. A number of artists have grown